Okay, so good morning, everybody. We have a great panel with us today. I'd like to call upon stage all the panelists, please. You know who you are. Matan is the CISO at NPCI, and prior to that, he was the head of security, IT security at HDFC Bank. And I will let all of you introduce yourselves. I think that is better. I may not do justice enough. And we have Mike from Akamai, the CTO security of Akamai for Asia. And Hidayatullah Khan, he is an entrepreneur himself, runs a company called Centralist, also is a SANS trainer. And Shiv, and there he is. Round of applause for Shiv. Shiv is also a veteran of the cybersecurity space. Most recently, his stint is as the CISO of Bombay Stock Exchange. So great. The topic for today is basically that many companies are investing a lot of money into the SOC. They have invested, they continue to invest. And yet, when a breach happens, the SOC is not normally the first unit or the entity within the security setup that realizes that there is a breach. And sometimes it does and alerts, and then the incident response process doesn't kick in as it is supposed to. And then also we find that whenever we do red team assessments, many times the blue teams don't realize even that the red team is going on. So what's fundamentally going wrong? Where are we losing the plot, so to say? And also there is this now hype around next gen SOC. So the current gen SOC isn't working, and now we're talking about the next gen SOC. So are we trying to, run before we've learned to walk? The panel here are all industry veterans. They've built SOCs, managed SOCs, implemented SIEMs, evaluated multiple SIEMs, so on and so forth. So what we're going to do essentially is keep the panel discussion shortish, maybe about 20-25 minutes. And then I would encourage all of you to take advantage of the folks here and really pick their brains to ask some of the challenges that you are facing in your organizations or you feel are challenges with the SOC and the blue teams. So I will start right off the bat, maybe with Hidayat on the far end of the panel. Hidayat, what do you think about the current SOC problems? Can we say the SOC as we know it is defunct? It's basically useless? Would that be a fair statement, a strong statement, or,
the SOC has really not been a defunct so far. It's just that, the way that we are trying to get the, performance from the SOC is not really true. It's not really done in the right way. In my experience as a consultant, going around to different organizations, I found out that the basic fundamental problems in any organization is that, they have not done the basic fundamental things right? So as we all know that SOC is considered as the heart of a security organization for the security of an enterprise. So if the heart, in order to function properly, the limbs, the body, everything, the whole, the health of the body should also be, properly done. So in my opinion, the fundamentals have not been tackled properly. So for example, I found out in my audits, in my consulting assignments, that the 4 things which are needed for any SOC to work properly is not done. The first thing is the asset inventory. I don't, in many organizations, there's no, an idea about the different assets which are there, authorized, unauthorized assets. So if I don't know which is an unauthorized asset on my network, how is the SOC going to defend it, right? This is the first thing that I always say. And the second thing that I have identified is, the configuration management issues. Every organization, they don't have something called a baseline, a configuration management issue. Every applications or, they're not properly sending the logs, there's no configuration management. So if there's no configuration management, how am I going to use my SOC to properly identify the issues out of that? The third problem that I have noticed is, the data discovery. If I don't know where the data is on my network, right? Is it residing on my, I know that the data, I mean, there are data stores, databases, but then my critical data, do I know where it is? On which system, who has access to it, who needs access to it, and how is it getting accessed? If I don't have answers to all these three questions, whatever kind of SOC that I have, I find I'm not able to derive the maximum out of the SOC. So three fundamental problems, if we handle it, probably the SOC will start functioning properly.
I think what you're referring to is what we call technology debt, which is essentially that your IT is having so many problems that obviously security is constrained, and that it has an impact on when you're running and setting up and running a SOC.
Yeah.
So I would like to ask Shiv now, because Shiv, you were earlier in a place where probably the SOC was there or was being upgraded, and now at the Bombay Stock Exchange you've set it up from scratch. So obviously it's two very different experiences coming into, so what do you think are the lessons learned? Like maybe if you set up the third SOC, uh, what would you do differently?
So I agree what he says, so first the fundamental things has to be right, your all the log sources, your all the asset has to be, integrated with the SIMs. But now the threat vectors are changed, so time scale and accuracy has become very important. How quickly you can respond those alerts and how quickly you can come to know. If I can say it's all everything we talk about the real time basis, that becomes very important. So I'm talking about everything is a proactive basis rather than on the reactive basis. So that's become very important.
Okay. And Mike, you were telling us earlier that at Akamai you just said, let's not even talk about the traditional SIMs, and you went ahead and you guys have gone ahead and built something of your own. So could you tell us a little bit more why you did that, and if you're willing to share, what are the technology components in your SIM?
Yeah, so we do things very different for a couple of reasons. I think the biggest one is that we're an infrastructure provider. Okay, so if you look at the majority, I've got today I think I have 240,000 servers. Okay, and I've got maybe 7,000 or 8,000 customers that reside on top of those servers. Okay, for the infrastructure players, we aren't running traditional SOC infrastructure like you know it, for the simple reason that our core operating system, like 15 years ago, it looked like Debian Linux. Today, it looks nothing at all like that. We've modified every piece of software there, and we have about 2,000 developers that do that. So for us, we've got a large chunk of developers. Nothing really that we can buy off the shelf scales to the level that we need it to scale. So when we customize our software, we actually add in performance hooks. We add monitoring hooks, and then we build a system to monitor that. We do log management a lot differently. There's a lot of different stuff that we do. When it comes to, say, the performance pieces that cuts into also what our NOC operators do, we have every running process reports back telemetry to a local database that gets forwarded to a Postgres database. So it's just, we have different clusters of Postgres depending on whether you need the 5-minute view, the 5-hour view, the all-day view. Depends on what kind of view you need. You hit the appropriate database and you can pull it. But because the data is there, we also build queries. So we have automated queries against that pulls out information, and then that fires off scripts to go respond to what's happening. Okay. So we took this approach with our NOC, and we've used it for quite a while, where we have the interface that the NOC operators use that's on their desktop, and we monitor mouse clicks. We monitor what processes they do, and then every month we look at what did they do the most of, and then we have somebody who tries to automate that out. Okay? But we can do that because we own the tooling, we built the interface, and so we have a lot of an advantage there, where I don't think that works for the average kind of SOC operator. Okay? The other big thing that we have is on the SOC side, we actually have 2 SOCs. So we had on a cloud WAF side, and then we had one on a on a DDoS mitigation scrubber side, and we combined those two, and we had a lot of culture clash initially. And the reason is, in a web application firewall world, success is 24 requests that go away, and you do a lot of proactive tuning, a lot of monitoring, a lot of minor exception handling. It's a very quiet kind of, it's just a quiet, calm sort of world. And in the DDoS mitigation world, it is the customer starts sending you attack traffic, and you've got a 15-minute SLA to identify the problem and solve it. And so those guys are more like firefighters, right? They're adrenaline junkies. And when we took these two SOCs and stuck them together, we noticed that the tools for one doesn't work with the other one. The people's mentality was different. You know, the firefighter guys look for a burning building so they can run in and rescue people. And that's exactly the opposite of what you want to do with the other guys. So our tools actually today, we still have two different sets of tools in order to suffice both of those different groups.
Okay. And Matan, as we were discussing also earlier, you have been part of now two, at least major SOCs for two large financial organizations. How important do you think the choice of the SIM technology, you know, taking off from what Mike said, they basically custom built their whole thing. Most of us can't do that. We don't have 2,000 developers. You know, if given your experience, and you also in a previous avatar, you were working with customers and advising them. So how important do you think the choice of a specific SIM technology is in terms of, let's say, the big names, you know, the Curadars, the Splunks, the ArcSights, etc. We're not, you know, feel free to diss any particular technology, but in general, you know, how important is the choice of that technology?
So fundamentally, let me address two specific areas. One, SOC is colloquially used as like we all panel told, that's the heart of operations. The primary differentiating factor that I would want to put in is that in the entire cyber security strategy that an organization aligns, which is prevent, detect, respond, and predict, which is largely, and if not left out with the four, becoming recover as the fifth strategy that typically people are working today. SOC is only a part of the detect umbrella, right? SOC becoming, it does nothing but monitor. So if we were to equate that to a rightful presence that we would have here today in the physical world, if you were to set up a monitoring today, there are a variety of ways we monitor, right? You set up cameras in every single area, you have a monitoring mechanism that is put in place. Most of the co-panelists also agreed in similar lines, telling that where can I place, the placement of the cameras plays a very, very crucial role as to what is getting fed into the central mechanism. One thing that we have to understand for real is that what we see in the camera is a post-facto incident that it has already happened, as it has happened already, and how quickly you are having your eyes and views to monitor them and analyze them to try and identify is what I have seen is what is likely a potential malicious activity or so, and take an action upon. So quite naturally, the analysis and the response time is quite naturally beyond the time the incident has happened, right? So it will never be, we may want to claim ourselves to, whether with fame of next-gen SOC or any words that are put in place, it will always be reactive in nature. So let's set that principle right. SOC will always be reactive. It will never be able to stop an incident from happening. It can only help aid an incident analysis and then try and improvise upon how quicker, reduce the time for my quicker remediation action that I can do through. That's point one. Having said that, to answer your query straight away, will the technology matter? So today, like I told, if I were to relate it back into a common colloquial word of cameras being a rightful method, SOC, when I underlying founding pillar of forming a SOC is a technology named SIEM. I would say that any and every SIEM technology, I would equate them with at par. So I have never advocated the principal idea of a technology is superior than yet another technology. Every technology is built with some or the other feature function. No single organization would have leveraged a technology to its 100% feature function that a developer has developed it for. The best of the companies in the world may leverage a technology to the extent of 30 odd percent, the best of the companies. People who typically land up buying a technology, I would be far more to happily able to see if they are able to leverage 5% of the technology as it was built here in India even, right? So going by that, soft technologies that are used, I would not give a weightage to any individual vendor for his supremacy. It has to be primarily with what I would want to. So where the second largest gap I would see is most often in technology companies like us, CISOs become brand ambassadors for such of these technologies. So we'll end up advocating rather even advocating, we get easily carried away with hundreds of feature functions that each of these technology players demonstrate to us. So as long as that is eliminated and as CISOs we have an understanding as to what do I want to do. Some of my co-panelists addressed, it is important that we monitor the right aspects. So there is no point in me keeping the camera somewhere in the center and having a visibility only to this side of the room when the entry is focused on the other side. So the rightful placement of your cameras, which means in the conventional SIEM and the SOC world, what do you want to tap? What all logs that you have to feed into plays a very, very crucial role to make an effective security operation monitoring center. I wouldn't call it as an operation center, security monitoring center. That's what I would look at. And any of these technologies, I would relate them equally in par with any other technology that is available in market. It is for us to put to use them in the right context. Yeah, long answer. But
general PSA, I'm not checking my phone. I'm making note of what you guys are saying. Okay. Open question actually to everybody on the panel. Most of us have invested, a few millions, Mike, crores, we call it crores in India. It refers to a lot of money, shitload of money basically. So all of us have invested these humongous sums of money in the SOC, which is the technology, the people, the process, all of it, then the operational cost of it, etc. And then you find that to do more. So you go to your CFO and say, I need another shitload of money. And then the CFO says, for what? And you say, for the SOC. And he says, for the what? Because what is this SOC thing? I've never heard of it. I don't know what it does. What are we getting from it? So this brings me to the question is that how do you measure the effectiveness of your SOC? What are the KPIs sort of thing? And how do you demonstrate to management that, look, we are getting something out of this? Of course, ROI on security is challenging, but still, how do you present, how do you measure the effectiveness of the SOC and how do you present it to the board? So anybody on the panel?
Shiv, sorry, if I can take that first, my apologies, because this is something that is very close to my heart in terms of getting
funding.
Funding.
It's close to my heart also.
It's it has been a tough journey over the past.
Sorry, but you guys understand why I'm asking this question, right?
Yeah.
Because eventually the business comes to me.
Correct. So two things, right? So here again, I would say that it is sheerly abuse of people like us is the way that we have so far run security in the industry. Say, as a CISO, typically, how do you try and go and get money from your CFO? Today, typically, it is done in this manner that unless you have a rightful need, you would always showcase a threat that has happened in the next door. Sir, बाजू में breach हो गया. My apologies, Mike. There is a next door breach, and it is claimably the next door breach could have been identified had we deployed such a technology. You didn't approve of this technology when I asked you last. Now this has happened in the next door. Please approve this for me.
FUD.
Just to add, two business is working very good. One, एक डर का धंधा बहुत अच्छा चलता है और एक गॉड के वहाँ पे भी ये डर का ही धंधा चलता है और
And you guys
Risk
have
may
both.
be dar ka.
You guys have both because fear is who else got hacked and God is the regulator, right? So both are there.
So in the name of God, in the name of breach, that era is gone. So today it is becoming challenging even for CISOs to go and get for this particular rightful budget ask that we should get from. So here, I would actually tell that our readiness, our equippedness to go and get that money out from our business is where our weaknesses are. So look at how typically the era of digitization that is transforming here in India. We have digitization in every single piece that touches a individual, any service, whether it is citizen services rendered by government of India, whether it is anything that you would want to do in the life, there is a digitized way of doing this through. So going by the digitized need, some of these business guys does what is called as your whiteboarding. You don't get a fund of 100 crore just approved by the company just like that for you to do the whims and fancies that you would want to do in your life, right? So you do a detailed whiteboarding to derive. This is what I intend to do. By doing so, this is what I would bring in as revenue to a company or so on and so on. So that whiteboarding work is something that lacks completely today in the security world that we live in. So like I told CISOs, we should come out of the way to showcase fear in the eyes of managements and then get budgets from them, rather showcase value as to right from evolving it as a whiteboarding. What would this particular technology, so-called technology piece that we would want to do, address, render, or bridge? Sometime most of the technologies that we would want to buy is also going to bridge. Now there are again two questions over here. There are variety of niche technologies that gets developed locally, globally, and then comes to here, India here. So when we see that, it obviously is a question that like KK lightly asked, you actually asked in the name of SOC earlier X money. Now again you are telling me for monitoring, again I need something more. Same as the storyline with some of the other buzzwords called APTs, right? So you tell something, I bought something in the name of APT as of last year with this. Now still it is unaddressed gap. I would still want something more, which is a point product and so on and so forth. So it is equally important for us to ratify that technology always evolves that way. There is something that you would have to invest to address a specific point need as and when we get into a situation like that. And then also have a strategy to go and re-look back at that over a 3-year period horizon. So you invest, some of the investment that you would have made over the early 3-year period is no more valid now because I would want to consolidate. So you invest point and then re-look at a strategy to consolidate them back. That is the way that I would look at.
So coming on your SOC
Metrics, yeah.
effectiveness, I
KPI.
think, there is a no single short answer for this. There are lots of things. One is like, you're talking about the percentage of the compliance, center patch, antivirus, and other stuff, your red team exercise, your, audits. But actually, when you're testing, the simulation, others, whether your, devices are working up to their capacity or not, the SOC team is getting alert or not, an actual test when real incident is happened, whether you're getting alerts right time and you are identifying also at right time and taking an appropriate action. Then only you can say the SOC effectiveness is there.
Going back to your question, KK, about the, how do we get the CISO's influence for this? In my opinion, translating the risks into business, articulating in a business way, it's not done by us, the information security folks. We do a lot of work as virtual CISOs for a lot of organizations. And at one point of time, it's just a small, a little incident that I want to illustrate to, showcase this point. So it was a budget time and we had allocated so much amount of money for antivirus, so much for, next gen firewalls and all that stuff. So the CFO, he knocked down the complete investment, the budget for the antivirus. And then, he said, these are the things of the past. Today, there are no viruses out there, right? And then there's the, why is this investment needed? So immediately in the mind, you think, what is this guy thinking about? But then, you have to have data-backed analogies to actually help convince the business people. So what we did was, I mean, yes, he was right in a way. In a way, why he was right was, in the olden days, we had noisy viruses. I love you, Nimda, all those red code and all. Everybody knew in the world. It was all over the CNN, all over the world, newspapers. But today the viruses have changed. It's all stealthy, targeted, data focused, and it's not visible on the radars and the screen. So what we did was we went and did a complete, quarantine viruses assessment for the last 3 months. And then we went and showed it to him. Look, 80,000 viruses you have blocked with just the traditional antivirus. If you knock this off, fine. You said these 80,000 viruses are trying to get inside your organization. So trying to articulate it in a business way really made that thing, successful. So what I feel is the way that we talk to the management, the senior management, has to be in a way that they understand from their language, and that will give us the budgets and the money, for order to do this.
So I look at it in 3 different aspects. And the first one is, what things should you be doing today that you're not doing because you don't have budget, okay? And in that case, your auditors, your assessors, your peers, even some industry publications help out a lot to basically say, look, we've got this debt. We can't fix that debt unless we have funding. That's one model, okay? Another model is, what kind of things can you do with the resources that you have? There's lots of stuff that's out there. You can just grab it off the shelf, right? So like, if you have hardware, you can stand up a Linux server, you can start taking syslog. That's a bare minimum, okay? But a lot of people aren't doing that. So you say, look, what are the things that are out there that we're not doing today? Another good, like a more modern example is like shadow server information, right? If you're not getting shadow server information, looking through that, doing threat hunting, using it, and rolling that back into your SOC, well, that's a free resource that's out there. It might take some staff to use it, but it's out there, okay? So there's the piece of like, what are you doing there? And then there's the third piece, which is, what things are you doing today that are repetitive that, right, so it's the same thing over and over and over again that you can actually automate. And my philosophy in life has always been, take the things that you do over and over again, automate that. Your job is to work yourself out of a job so that you can do the next job, okay? So between these 3 things, you kind of have to work and balance and, kind of go in one direction and then shrink back and go in another and shrink back. But between all of that, you kind of manage what you're doing at a tactical level.
Okay, excellent. That brings me to another question which we didn't discuss when we were brainstorming before the panel. And this is my last question to the panel, then we'll leave it to the audience. Is that a lot of this is so heavily people dependent, right? Today, a SOC needs not just your typical L1, L2 analysts. We have RFPs coming in that are asking for a data scientist as part of the SOC. Machine learning and AI components are being delivered by the SIMs, but not being used within the SOC because people simply don't know how to leverage that UABA component effectively. You mentioned threat hunting. You obviously need pretty high-end skills to do threat hunting. Incident response itself is such a, can get to be a complex exercise depending on the incident. So how are you guys tackling the people skill set issue in your setups? Anybody?
Again, can I? Yeah, so without stating, in every company that you would go, there will be as many SOCs. Again, I am relating back, SOC is not equal to a product, but then SOC is equal to the ability that you monitor. Say you have a dedicated monitoring which looks at conventional technology, looks at logs that are originating from typical applications. The moment you collocate that to a web specific, you would have a web application firewall. Most often companies which ties back WAF logs into SOC will find it way too noisy. Why they find it way too noisy is the guy who is monitoring the SOC today conventionally doesn't understand what goes behind a web, right? Expand that into a database. So the moment it is a database, you would want to put something called as a DAM, database activity monitoring tool, and you start integrating this back into a SOC. He again doesn't have a fair understanding of what goes over there. So SOC professionals, when I say security professionals, sees ourselves in silos, right? We see ourselves that divine role that we are in, that we are the only guys who understand security without actually understanding the underlying IT infrastructure that has been put in place. A largest gap is seen over there. So in essence, if you look at any company, you would have a SOC, which is equal to monitoring of data loss prevention technologies that you would have put. These guys look only data exfiltration that is happening. But look at what an attacker is doing to you. He is not creating any such silos in your environment. Whether he attacks your perimeter defenses, he penetrates your IT infrastructure layer, finding a vulnerability in the server or in the OS or in the hardware, anywhere that he finds, his core modus is to exfiltrate the data or to create a damage to you. You build your SOC in silo and isolation, where on earth we will be able to defend from such kind of hackers who are only looking at a prime objective of exfiltrating data. So that's where I was trying to come back to this idea as what you build is something has to follow through a methodology that what would you want to protect? And if what we would want to protect is ensuring that the infra is comprehensively available, right? That is what in the digital era that we live in, whatever infrastructure that we are put in place has to deliver its commit that my infra is stably available for the rest of the world to consume my services. The data that is held within this particular infra is comprehensively maintained in its own integral manner among the CIA triad, right? The core functionality as a security professional that we should address, especially in the financial and other areas, are integrity. Integrity plays a far more crucial role. The integrity of the data can't be lost, right? So if with these two objectives primarily that we set, and then build technologies around. Do we have to build the technologies around? Definitely the answer is yes, because none of the technologies that are out in the market today readily delivers these areas that we would want to go and address through. So there is a lot of potential need that we will have to put in place. How do we want to redefine this entire monitoring process, tie them back into a rightful orchestration mix, whenever we have to address that as a responsive action that we were to take. So those are two areas that I would look at how they should change or transform or move forward.
Yeah.
Thanks. But
So
again,
my,
in terms of the people
yeah.
part,
Yeah.
we
So my take on this is it's two parts to the coin. The first thing is today the adversary has really advanced, right? And there's no way with the current technology we are able to detect them. Like, for example, very recently, even the whitelisting of apps, which was considered as one of the can be easily bypassed, right? The PowerShell, okay, which I can actually use the PowerShell and, the JavaScript payload to run it from there.
sorry to interrupt you, but if we can be to the point in
Yeah.
terms of, how are you addressing the people gap in security? We know it's
Yeah.
complex and, the adversary is
So I'm
insanely
trying to come
advanced.
to that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So the
sure.
people part today, okay, how do we address it? I would say, the level 1 tier analysts, they should be fully automated. For example, we have, instead of looking, I'm giving them only the task of looking at the glass and then identifying, the small stuff. Those things should be automated. Level 2, level 3 is something niche, where we should go ahead and incorporate, like what we discussed, threat hunting, cyber threat intelligence and all that stuff. But what I felt was, in my experience as a consultant, the way the red teams have evolved is because they have a lot of practice. Okay, we have CTFs going around, okay, where they learn how to hack and they get into very good professional hackers. But on the defensive side, the blue teams, we don't have this. So what I would advocate is for the internal teams, the blue teams, we should also have some kind of a gamification, right? Where they actually look at the logs, identify what needs to be done for the next level, and how they do all this threat hunting and all that stuff. Those kind of things will really help the people to grow inside of the SOCs.
So maybe maybe purple teams, maybe more regular purple team exercises benefits. Yeah. Shiv, Mike.
Yeah, I think, as much as possible in the SOC, we can, automate the process. So when you're talking about the automation machine, artificial intelligence, something different in the last level. So machine learning with the use of that, how much process you can automate so that you can eliminate at least the L1 monitoring, because it is very a tedious job looking, the scale and all, and you can, then only L2 and L2 guys think, the strategy levels are putting on some more brainstorming on the same and do the some good job on the same.
Yeah, so our SOC operators are a lot different than most people's SOC operators because we deal with web attacks, infrastructure attacks, DNS attacks. We don't necessarily deal with endpoint protection, but that'll change, right? But we deal with that. So I had the hardest problem when I built our CSERT, trying to find people that have a SOC operations background that also understood application security. Okay, these are completely different worlds. And so what I did was I mix and match. So I said, like, half of my folks I'll bring from the SOC operations side because they know how to follow an incident. They're like bulldogs. They just they bite on and chew until it's done. Okay, they're really awesome at that. The web application security guys, they want to go like hug developers, but they have the depth and background on how an application works. So that was the other half that I'd hire, and then I had to have a plan to cross-train them so that they could help each other out, okay? So we did that. But we're also kind of different in that we're a vendor. So we have a lot of other stuff going on. I actually have a career path for SOC operators. So they can work in SOC operations, and they can go do incident response. They can go over to product management. They actually have a future inside the organization beyond just being an operator. And I think that's a huge advantage, okay? And then the huge secret for us is my recruiting team, right? So I have a good relationship with the recruiters. The recruiters are actually our biggest sponsor of events. In most organizations, most vendors, it is going to be the marketing team that does all the event sponsorship. For us, our recruiters said, look, we need to find people, and they are actually engaged with events. And it's really strange. Like we have OWASP chapters that meet in our offices because we usually have good meeting rooms, and the recruiters sponsor it. And most times I don't even know that we're having meetings inside of our building. The recruiters have handled it. They bought pizza. They get people in there. It's absolutely amazing the level of involvement that I've gotten with the recruiters because they know that that's critical to what we do.
Awesome. That's a great point. So with this, we'll just leave the questions open to the audience. I'm sure there's lots and lots of hands going up. Yes, Mr. Dubey.
My question is to KK, very specifically.
Happy to speak.
What we have been observing for the last 5-6 years, there is a transformation which is happening in the skill, cyber security skill, for that matter, any kind of skill. We hardly find a 10-year-old experience who has an inclination to do hands-on activities. Everybody becomes manager after 5 years. So, and the kind of skill which you preach, and you rightfully preach, it requires a hands-on activity even at a senior level. How to get that kind of skill? Say you in a next generation SOC, which you have been talking very nicely, we can't really do justice by deploying people who are having 3-4 years or 5 years experience. And we need to have senior guys which have hands-on experience, which is there elsewhere in this world. But unfortunately in India, I may be wrong, but I don't find any people having 10 years experience, having a thrill to do hands-on activity.
So
It's a tough question, so I'll get time to think.
So there are a couple things at play there. One is just simple economics, okay? So for each butt that you have inside of a SOC, you need to hire 8 people, okay? Because you run You run 3 shifts per day, and then you usually have a couple days overlap. So for each seat, I have to hire 8 people, which gets it really expensive really quickly. Okay. And then once people are trained, then they go become a consultant, right? So like the amount of money that I'm willing to pay for a SOC operator is fairly small because I have to hire so many. And then once they get the skills, then they can go do penetration testing. They can go be a consultant. And so you're constantly fighting this, like this drain of people that you train them for a couple of years and then they go elsewhere. Everybody has a skills gap in SOC operators, okay, across the board. Automate it. Get rid of the bottom tier. Give them some kind of career path to get up and out so that they don't leave the organization. And try to get rid of all the mind-numbing stuff that they do that like the not fun stuff. Like there's a certain amount where it's just, anybody play hockey? Okay, so penalty killing, they take one of your players out of the game. It sucks, it's horrible, it's brutal, okay? But try to get rid of the sucks, it's horrible, it's brutal as much as you can. Some of it you just can't change. That's the nature of a SOC. But yeah, right? Like just understand where you're at and what you're trying to do. But everybody has the problem. India actually has a lot more techies and the price per person is smaller. Like, I don't know a tactful way to say it, right? But like staff is cheaper. It's always funny to me because in the US, people are expensive, technology is cheap, right? And inside of all of Asia, right? Right, it is. And inside of all of Asia, people are cheap, technology is expensive, and that kind of changes. So like, that's why we have BPO and things like that, is we leverage kind of that asymmetry, okay? So did I answer? I don't know, all right? It's.
I know you called us cheap, but the politically correct term I use is inexpensive. We say we are inexpensive.
And honestly,
Cost effective.
That's an even better one.
so honestly,
But I think just quickly a couple of
just
yeah.
1 second. Honestly, you didn't answer my question.
Okay,
because-
we
well,
are
my
usually
question-
nicer to guests and people visiting our country. We're just giving you a hard time.
Because
But no, so
But the KK, my question was to you because
Yeah.
eventually we will look upon to you people to serve us and give us the services. How are you solving that problem? Question was
So
precisely that.
I don't know if my answer works for you because in a company like mine, there are certain advantages which don't exist in an end user organization. My SOC manager, my head of my SOC has been a network administrator, an ArcSight administrator, a QRadar administrator, a Splunk administrator. It's not that he's done all of this full time, but he's gotten those many opportunities to learn and grow. And I think what Mike said does make sense because what happens in an end user organization is you're facing the same crap day in, day out. And there is not the next challenge to look forward to. Like if I have a project where I have to go fix a QRadar project, I know this pain will eventually end. This project will end. I will get paid for it and I will move on to my next project. But your SOC manager has to live that pain for 3, 4, 5 years. So his only way to get rid of that pain is to change jobs. So I think that's an advantage I have. If I find a guy is getting frustrated or bored, I can always give him a different opportunity or a different challenge. If you can find that within a large organization such as yourself, that's good. The other point I would say is that when we hire, we are not very discriminating in terms of specific security talent. In fact, no offense to all of us here, but I find a lot of non-security guys make better security guys given the opportunity. Developers make great AppSec testers. An OS or a network administrator will make a great OS and network systems info. And large organizations such as yourself, I think there is great value in having competitions where you go and literally give incentives for people in other teams to shift over to security. And then you put them through that training. So then their loyalty is more, right? Because you took them out of a more dead-end job and gave them at least what they thought would be more exciting. But at least they'll stick around for 2-3 years on that. Sorry.
So there's just really quick, there's a lot of things at the leadership level you can do to make SOCs not, or SOC operations not suck. Okay, so like I always had a standing policy on that when I was running CERT. If it's 2 p.m. on a Friday and there's nothing happening, get out of the office, right? Go home, okay? Because when I call you at 2 o'clock in the morning on Sunday, I want you to answer the phone. And I'm giving you that in advance. And as long as you understand that, that's cool, right? Because I know eventually I'm going to give you the suck, okay? But I try to balance it out. And I think leadership has a lot to do with that. And try to keep it fun, try to keep people motivated, try to keep them keep going. I think my personal advantage there was I was in the American Army for 16 years, and I was an infantry squad leader, and it's the same thing, right? You do things that suck. Trying to keep people motivated and going is very hard, but that's your job as a leader.
Thanks.
Yeah, just one
So,
quick question.
yes.
here. So how, like if you have a SIM tool deployed and you want to do, say, packet capture, how important is it and for forensics, right? So do you recommend that packet capture, or is it just overhead?
Could you be specific? Is this for somebody specific on the panel, or is it a general?
question,
Okay.
yeah.
So packet capture and forensics, full packet capture and forensics, how important is it as part of your SIM?
Yeah, it's very important. You know, the first question was by KK, you know, regarding an SIM tools. So choosing an SIM tool is also very important. How it is integrated with the bundling, like your packet capturing, your security analytic, your user behavior analysis, your other, you know, tools. So packet capturing is very important when you're doing a forensic or you want a real-time, you know, analysis of the complete traffic. Then yes, packet capturing is very important.
And also, I would like to add the use cases that you have for your SIM, right? Most of the organizations don't really know what are the use cases for themselves, right? I mean, they don't know what logs are needed in order for them to make their SIMs useful. So I would suggest a strategy is go down and, you know, check what are the 3 most important, you know, things that you are worried about for your organization. 3 important attacks that if they happen, you're doomed, your enterprise is doomed. Then choose those logs which will give you the visibility into those things. Then use your SIM to train them to look into those logs. Maybe packet capture, maybe something else, right? That way you need to do. So use cases is very important, yeah.
Okay. We have time for just a few more questions. Then I need to also summarize.
One question. So we heard about SOC and then we talk about next generation SOC. And now there's a new word in the market which is known as managed detection and response, MDR. So how you can differentiate that? What is the next generation SOC and MDR?
अरे वही है सब वही है
It's all about the market jargons. That's it. It's a marketing.
Secret, don't tell anybody outside.
Hi. We spoke a lot about automation in terms of L1 task automation, right? Now, just coinciding with gentleman's query in terms of how do we retain the talent. I'm not talking about retaining talent, okay? Nothing to do with HR, right? Building L2 skill set, right? When the L1 tasks are automated, what are your thoughts about building the L2 skill set and having them change over?
Make it inclusive in the SOC. So all of us echoed that, see, let's not treat ourselves, the era that we are in today, there is nothing that has to be created as a specific security professional. You can't secure unless you know what is underlying in it, right? You don't know the IT infrastructure, you don't know how the web layer works, you don't know how the database works, what will you secure? Make an inclusive culture in an organization whereby the rest of the typical IT team is also an inclusive part of your SOC. So as a strategy, I don't want to tell as a strategy that we have done in my early years and in the current past. Expand the portfolio of who runs the SOC to beyond the security professionals. Also, IT functions to be part of your SOC makes a very, very differentiated way to build your L2 teams. Otherwise, we will become gods. So security professionals always thinks we are the gods, we have the authority to, so that's not going to work anymore. Yeah.
in my opinion, like I was just mentioning a few minutes back, gamification really helps in developing the L2, L3 skills. Okay, the way we have elite hackers is because they do a lot of, what do you call it, within a contained environment, they practice the skills. But the L2, L3, they are in a live environment, so they can't really do real analysis, real malware stuff and all that. So if you put them through the gamification process, in a contained environment, and those things will really evolve. The skills will evolve in those areas.
All the questions have been from this side. I want to give chance to this side.
Yeah, that's one way to be fair. Just switch to the
From
other.
your experience as SOC head, what kind of things, internal threats like have you seen, and how much of investment is required for protecting against internal threats if it is really a concern? The organizations I have worked and the customers I have worked with, they all focus on the external threats, nothing much on the internal threats. And is that a concern, or have you seen the real life experience with the internal threats? And if yes, what? Thank you.
Yeah. So definitely, I mean, when you are considering about the SOC, you need to look into all the aspect, external threat, internal threat. And internal threat has become very important also. There are lots of technologies that PIM is there. So you need to identify, integrate all your privilege access via PIM. You have a DAM is there. So there are internal monitoring tools are also there. So those things you need to integrate it.
I think today almost all the threats are internal. The cause of the attack is outside, but the source of the attack is from inside. We have the accidental guy who clicks on the links as part of the phishing attacks, as part of a thing. So internally is all the things that are really happening. That's, if I'm not able to look at the internal part, this is how I will never identify data getting exfiltrated outside. So today what we have is, I think the gentleman in the panel brought up, our devices are myopic in nature. They're looking at only one direction. But the exfiltration, everything is happening from the back end, from behind the doors, from the back doors. So if we go ahead, change our myopic views, so where the attack, where the data is escaping, that's where I can go ahead and make some, changes and investments for that. So every attack, I would say, is internal.
So when we put in our budget, if you look at me, you can say directly about 80% of what I would spend would largely focus on internal only strategy. There is no threat that is breaching my perimeter and trying and doing things. No, there is no firewall breach that we hear in the market. There is none of these, right? It's all internal involvement. An employee of the inside is involved in every single breach that is there in the news. So any technology company has to ideally buy, largest chunk should be focused on the internal.
Look at all the new sort of tech, the EDRs and MDRs and what else is there? UBAs and NBAs and XYZs. They're all talking about internal.
Do we have time for one more question? Or
Yes. One, two. Yeah, something in the rear also. Yeah, only the front runners are asking queries.
So KK, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So one question which I have is, nowadays there is a lot of awareness about cyber security, and it's also being discussed at the board level. So what would be the typical relevant cyber security related metrics that a next generation SOC would require to report to the board?
I think that's the question I also asked, and I understand why you're asking it again. But I think what the panelists said is what I would also say, which is that in security and IT, we don't speak the business language. Like if you go and say we found so many SQL injections, half the board is going to go to sleep, right? They don't care once SQL injection, cross-site scripting. So, I mean, one is that we don't explain that in terms of the risk to the business. So you'll find SOC metrics talking about number of spam mail blocked. How does that matter to the board? And how is that a metric that you're doing a great job? I mean, the spammers are doing a great job because your spam has increased. So what did you do? the number of, attacks on my firewall. What have you got to do with it? It's the world that is attacking you. You were blocking 5, now you're blocking 500. It's not that you improved, it's that the world got worse. So I think the metrics that we take are very inward looking, they're very tech jargon security focused. We're not walking the bridge to the other side. What I would prefer, for example, is, and these are difficult metrics to measure, time to detect, time to respond. You need a fairly mature incident response process. You need it mapped onto your service desk to be able to really plot that you're improving or not on time to detect and time to respond for various categories of incidents that are happening. And the use cases that you're building that are more business centric, right? A lot of our use cases are, firewall changes detected, which are good. I mean, these are what we call hygiene compliance use cases. You have to do that. You don't have a choice because the auditor is going to come and ask you these questions. But none of these metrics actually matter to the business. If you ask the retail banking head, what matters to you, he's not going to say, can you tell me the number of times there were failed password attempts for the admin accounts on my servers? He won't talk that. But we're talking that. We think it's important. It's not important to them. And they're the ones that are giving us the money. So it's, again, the panelists brought this up. Understanding your true risks, understanding your true threats. And this requires having that evolved conversation with the business. It requires us to go sit across a coffee meeting and say, what matters to you? And you'll be shocked at what you hear. I'll give you a conversation that I had with one of the CEOs. We were finding repeated SQL injections on their website. Every year we do a pen test, we find an SQL injection. It's a pretty large .com. And then I finally met the CEO because he was a friend of mine. I said, yeah, your guys are not fixing these bugs. What the hell? He said, okay, tell me what is this SQL injection? I said, look, this is what we can do. We can get access to your entire database. We can change it, blah, blah, blah. He said, well, even if you dump my whole database, my business does not get impacted. I was like, what? He says, yeah, it does not. And he went on to explain to me why it does not. And I had no answer to that. I said, yeah, you're right. Don't fix your SQL injection. If I can't convince the CEO, that means either I am wrong or he's right. In this case, well, okay, he was right. I couldn't convince him. So I think we're not having those conversations with the business. We're very inward looking. We're too much into our own jargon. Yeah. I think we'll just take one last question from the back. Yes, the guy with the cap and the glasses.
Hi everyone, this is Pawan.
You're not that guy. Okay.
You are making a SEC system robust using multiple technologies like next generation firewalls, NAC solutions, and WAFs, all these things. But how we are dealing with the zero-day attacks? But which the attacks are coming different behavior day by day. Every hour the hash values are getting changed. How can we deal with zero-day attacks?
There is nobody on earth today dealing with zero-day attacks. Let's be factual. So every technology that we all
pray very hard every day.
I hope that whoever made up the phrase zero-day attacks, I hope they get royalties on that, because that idea people just run with that.
I think there was, sorry Mike, just to interrupt you, there was a great point that Harun Mir brought up in his keynote. How many 0 days do you need in a red team assessment? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is 0. It's a JBoss console password. That's it. It's an SQL. That's it. It's an Excel file called info.xls with everybody's passwords on it for the shift change operators to get access, right? So it's stuff like that. Sorry, just in the interest of...
Let you complete your point. It's a marketing term, okay? It's a marketing term. Do not get hung up on it. It's vendors trying to sell you their new crap, because the old crap can't detect it. And like every 2 or 3 years, we'll have a new buzzword that we'll throw in there. Oh, nobody else can protect you against this and this and this. It's all marketing bullshit.
But what about the ransomware?
Technical term, mind you. Technical term, okay?
Okay, I think that's a great note to end it on. Very quickly, I'd like to summarize the key points. I don't know if anybody's interested, but let me do it anyway because I'm a consultant. The first point that Hidayat mentioned, there's a lot of technology that weighs down security. I think we all know that. We don't know your technology landscape, you don't know your assets. So how are you going to ensure your SIM coverage is sufficient? One of the key points that kept coming up again and again is how can you quickly detect and respond? That's basically the heart of what the entire SOC is about. And we don't measure that effectively. You guys, then Mike mentioned about all the custom stuff he's doing, which is pretty impressive. And I guess they'll be now offering SOC. You'll be in the MSSP business soon. Should we be scared about that?
No, we have,
Okay.
we have for a good 5 years already.
Okay.
But it's just for the products.
For the products. Please don't get into the general MSSP space. And then, the other great point which mentioned was that SIM technology itself is not that big a deal. So I think we spend a lot of time and effort in choosing the right technology, but at the end, we all realize maybe that was not the key success factor. We only anyway end up leveraging only 30% of whatever we buy. So that's the one. And I think when anybody is setting up a SOC, what do you really want out from it? Again, as much as you can articulate that from a business perspective is important. Hidayat mentioned a very good point in terms of red team and blue team and making sure the SOC has a chance of picking things up. We're losing a crowd here. But in terms of people, I think that's a big challenge. Cross-training across domains, choosing people from different departments, trying to reskill them for security. I think that's very important. Giving your key guys the next challenge to look forward to, because the current challenge sometimes gets too stressful. So they need something to look forward to, something more interesting, more challenging that they will be doing. I think, Mike, you brought up a great point. We are going to do this. Good relationship with recruiters. We have that. I have that. But recruiters being the biggest sponsors of events, and we've seen that with Akamai. We see Akamai everywhere, and all they're doing is hiring and poaching our guys in general. And, so I think that's great. This is a talent war more than a technology war. And, so the people issue is extremely important. There's lots of other good stuff. I've skipped through this. I'll write up a blog post on this and, follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter to get that blog post. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, KK. Thanks to panelists.